Hi, everybody. So we will get started here in a couple of minutes. But before we get started, I just want to tell you once again, thank you for joining us in this group. It's been a really busy month and it's been exciting. But yet, it's been so encouraging to know that people are out there and wanting to get the knowledge to try to improve health. So I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you and how much I love you. I know I'm going to probably tell you that every time I am showing my face, but I really do mean it. And hopefully you understand that that's why we're here. So we're going to get started promptly. I would like to introduce Dr. Babs. I am so excited that she's interested in this journey, and then the fact that we met each other just because she had a sugar story and I did too. It was really just so, I guess it was just good to know that somebody else was out there championing the idea of cutting out or cutting back on sugar. But to know that she's a physician and that she had also gone through a personal struggle and journey of her own was even a more unique story to me, because one of the things that you might find that's difficult in the community is that when you do come across the path of your physician, you might have some barriers in talking about what to eat or what not to eat, because as we know, there are so many different diets out there. So I'm just excited to introduce her. She is a board certified family physician, and she also she's an obesity specialist and is a fitness instructor. She tries her best to make learning fun and exciting, but she also incorporates faith into her experience and her journey. So I am going to introduce her and just join her in. And I hope you all are going to have a good time tonight, okay? I also have looked at a couple of your questions, and we'll get to those at the end, okay? So hopefully she'll be with us and talk for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll get to a Q&A at the end, okay?
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Babs.
Hi. It's nice to be with you this evening. Thank you for the invitation. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Well, I'm
And
so glad you're here. So glad.
and good evening to all our community members. It just gladdens my heart where I see women, just championing their health, because that's what it's all about. So thank you for giving this opportunity to speak with you all. I will go ahead and share my slides. I like to discuss with slides because it keeps me contained, because it's so much to talk about. And I'll make sure that I'm really mindful of your time. So let me go ahead and get this going. All right, let's see how that's looking. Okay. All right, well, let's get started. So what we'll be talking about are the 6 effective and proven systems of breaking the bondage of sugar. And we have this amazing group of sisterhood, and it's all about accountability, about having each other's back. Sean had mentioned that being a doctor, we're all still humans, being a nurse, whatever the situation is, this is one battle that we all face and we all encounter, just really trying to figure out what do we do to stay in our optimal health. So I'm going to try and my best this evening to just talk about a few items here. I'm going to start off by talking about the sugar addiction pathway. I'm going to explain in depth what that means. I'm going to talk about the relevance to health. Why is it important? Why should we care? I'm going to give you some supportive data, because it's all about data. And then I'm also going to talk to you about the way to optimize your health, to optimize your health using the living at your finest health. Now, this picture over here says that you have 2 homes, right? We have the earth and we have our body. So we need to do a really good job of taking care of it. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. All right. So as mentioned, I'm a family physician, but unfortunately, I've had my struggles with just chronic diseases, and it all spared from just eating a ton of sugar. Unfortunately, even though I ate healthy and I knew the right thing to do, I was addicted to sugar. And it all just goes back way in my childhood. There was always desserts. My dad, anytime he's coming home, or like, what are you going to bring for us? That was his way of just making us feel that he loved us. There was always sugar, always cake. My mom used to tell me that anyone could kidnap me if they promised to give me a slice of cake, that I'm like, I'm all yours, take me. So that was just how addicted I was. So unfortunately, as I got older, my body wasn't able to process as well as it did when I was a child. So joint aches. I had lots of arthritis. I had chronic fatigue. Blood pressure was going up because I was gaining a lot of weight. And just, last couple of years, I said, this has to stop. I needed to figure it out for myself once and for all. I'd been on multiple diets, yo-yo diets back and forth. And, it wasn't doing me much good. Unfortunately, I would lose it and gain it back with extras. So I needed to figure it out. And of course, to help my patients, because it's not as simple as just eat and exercise. And so that's where I started my wellness journey. And to God be the glory, I was able to start my company called Living at Your Finest. Now, you notice that I didn't say weight loss company, because if we're living at our finest, the weight will ultimately drop. Of course, it had to be a learning process for me. I had to figure out what was sustainable that would keep me from craving sugar. And that was when I went ahead and I did a course in obesity medicine. I did a few training in functional medicine, because unfortunately, doctors don't get that training in medical school. We barely get 2 hours of nutrition training. And the model that we have right now is more of disease focused, where, oh yeah, you have diabetes, let's give you medication. Or you have hypertension, let's give you medication. Versus what can we do to prevent that? So for my own life, I was on 3 blood pressure medicines, 220 over 120, almost dying of a stroke. And I had to be on 3 blood pressure medicines to get my blood pressure down. Unfortunately, those medicines alone were just bandages, right? They didn't take care of the root of the problem. So going back to the root of the problem is where functional medicine comes in. And then more and more doctors, their eyes are opening to realize that we need to change the model that we use right now. So let's move along and talk about addiction. Why are we so addicted to sugar? Several reasons. The food industry, they know how to make us addicted because of all the things that they put in it. Now, when you say addiction, I know nobody likes the word addiction. We're thinking cocaine addiction, heroin addiction, but addiction is addiction. If it controls your life and you are always thinking about it, and you need to be rewarded one way or the other, that is called an addiction. You go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it. That was me. I was constantly thinking about sugar, anything sugar. And when I talk about sugar, again, it's carbohydrates, whether it's white rice, white bread, anything, all these things convert to sugar. We have simple and complex, and I'll dive in a little bit more about that. But it's available, it's everywhere. It's sort of different from cocaine, because cocaine is not everywhere and marijuana is not everywhere, but food is everywhere. You go to church, it's there. You go to work, it's there. Your kids' school, it's there. It's always there in one form or shape. So it's always there. It's advertised. It's available. It's affordable. Unfortunately, it's so cheap compared to real food, because of all the addictive things they put in it. So the half-life extends years and years. So that's why, sugar addiction is so high and rampant. Now, the question here now I want you to know, and that I had to ask myself, because it's more than just willpower. So it's more than me just telling my patients, well, your blood pressure is high, your sugar is high, just cut back. It's more than just that. We have to get, like I mentioned, go to the root of the problem. So the question then is it your fault that you're addicted to sugar? My answer is no, because there is something going on in the brain. The food industry has put so much addictive substances in there that have enabled you to be hooked on it. And unless that cycle is broken, no diet can kill it, and no outrunning your like exercising all day, all night is not going to outrun the bad food choices. So what do I mean by this? If anyone can identify with me, I know that this happened to me. There was this sugar addiction perpetual cycle. So I crave sugar, I want it, I eat it. And then my sugar, whenever the spikes up high, what tends to happen is insulin, which is a hormone that is released from the pancreas, is saying, well, you know what? We have lots of sugar in the bloodstream. I need some insulin to get rid of that sugar. So insulin comes in. But every time we eat sugar, it's just temporarily. It gives us enough energy and then it crashes and then you have that desire again. So all the time you're having that insulin overworked. The pancreas is overworked. There's so much insulin. And then that's when you now start hearing terms like insulin resistance. If you've probably heard that from your doctor or from any of your healthcare provider. So you see over here, you have your insulin levels increase. And unfortunately, because of excess insulin, in excess sugar, the body stores the rest as fat. So it's a perpetual cycle. But let me take you into the brain and tell you really what happens. Naturally, and that's the pathways that you see over here, the limbic system is the braking system for all of us. The way God has designed our brain is that it tells us when it's enough. Right? It's enough. But then when we're overstimulated with sugar, that brake system does not work at all. So the frontal brain never gets the message from the limbic system that it's enough. So you still crave it. And when you're craving constantly, you're stimulating the stress neurons, which again is in the brain. So you're stressing it and it doesn't want to be stressed. The body doesn't want all that stress. And because they're not functioning to stop you, you keep wanting more. And I don't know if anyone has realized, just as I realized in my life, that one donut was not enough. How come we don't eat a ton of broccoli or a ton of celery, but we can eat a whole bag of donuts? And that's me, guilty, or a big cake. That's because the brake system in the brain is it's faulty. It's not working. It's not sending the message that it's enough. It's saying is that I'm stressed. I keep seeing this over and over. I keep thinking about it. Why don't you go ahead and eat it? And unfortunately, because we see it all around us, then we mirror. So we have the mirror neurons. So that's the pathway. So what am I trying to say here? It's not our fault. It is the system that has played this. And the more we're educated about it, the better we're empowered to do, to move in the right direction. So some of the questions that you might ask yourself is, am I addicted to sugar? Does this happen to me? Now, we do need to be honest with ourselves. If it doesn't happen to you, that's fine. Or maybe, based on the category, there's a scale. It's a scale of 1 to 11 questions. I'll just call out maybe 2 or 3 and see if you can identify with it. So have you found that when you start eating, you just want to eat more and more and more, you can't stop? Or are you craving all the time? Or do you eat desperate, being persistent? You're having problems with it. You know that your sugar is high, you have diabetes or high blood pressure, but you still crave for it. So these are a few of those questions. Or even eating it even though you know it's dangerous to you. These are some questions. Depending on how many you score will determine if you are severely addicted or if you're just mildly addicted. So those are some questions that I want you to pause and ask yourself to give you a sense of where you are. Now, there are several obstacles, unfortunately, that food addiction causes in the long run. It causes things like metabolic syndrome, which I will talk a little bit more about. It causes food craving, as I mentioned. It leads us into the diet culture cycle, which was where I was for many years. I just wanted to lose weight quick, fast. I wanted to do it quickly. Anytime I had, an event, I will lose the weight and then go right back again to my old patterns of eating and gain it right back. Of course, it gives you feeling of failure because we feel that it's willpower, but it's a little bit more than just willpower. It's skill power. Hormonal imbalance. Unfortunately, when you're addicted to sugar, because of all the abnormal things that occur with sugar, it causes that spike of insulin. You're never full, so your insulin never goes down. And after a while, the insulin just gets too tired. It causes inflammation in the bloodstream and also overworks the body. It causes a lot of stress. Our cortisol level is increased, which is a stress hormone, and again, leading to a lot of toxic, materials that are deposited. So it's a vicious cycle that goes on and on. So why is it important? Part of what I wanted to mention is that it's not just relevant for me to tell you what sugar does to us, but why is it relevant? The reason it's relevant is because as women, this is a community of women that are investing in our health. We want to be better. We want to live a great life, a healthier life. We want our lifespan to be equivalent to health span. We need to find out what it's doing to our body. So unfortunately, what it does in the long term is it causes obesity because over a long period of time, anything excess what the body cannot burn because it doesn't recognize it as real food. That's not the way we were created to digest. It stores up in the liver, causing fatty liver. It causes inflammation, as I already mentioned. It causes heart attack because you clog up your arteries, and blood cannot flow as well. So there are several, complications that can arise from that. Now, there are three things that I usually say cannot stay in the same body comfortably. So that's high blood pressure because of the extra pressure on the heart, diabetes, because again, you've overworked your pancreas and your insulin. And then we have high cholesterol. Even though that's not mentioned in this, it's also one of those three things. And who are the people that are at risk? African Americans. Studies have shown that we are more at risk. We're more likely to die of all these causes than counterparts, the Caucasian. So that means we need to be aware and empower ourselves with information. Now, we've talked about race. Now, what's about male and female? It's also higher in females. We can see here, based on the study, that cardiovascular events tend to be higher in females. Same thing with heart failure, coronary artery disease. And if I could pause here for a minute, the way heart attacks occur in females are different. It's very, very different from men. For men, they would have the classic chest pain, but for women, they could have just fatigue and, they'll feel like acid reflux. So they're an atypical way of presenting in females. So we need to empower ourselves and make sure that we are healthy and stronger, and we have the knowledge that will enable us to triumph as health champions. Now, let's talk about metabolic syndrome. So having said that, metabolic syndrome might be something that you've heard before. And what that means is just a collection of conditions. If you have 3 or more of these conditions, can put you at risk for all the chronic diseases that I mentioned, but most importantly, what we call metabolic syndrome. And this is what I had. I had high blood pressure. It was 130/86, greater than 130/85. Mine was in the 200s. High sugar. Now, I didn't have high sugar, but I had the high triglycerides, which is pretty much the fats in the body. We are supposed to have, our body naturally makes cholesterol, but when we make an excess amount and it's in the presence of inflammation, that is where it becomes very dangerous. Low HDL. Now, what that means is the good cholesterol that's supposed to get rid of the bad cholesterol is in low amounts. And the last but not the least is the waist circumference. So this is something that doesn't get measured in the clinic. We don't do it, but I think it's something we need to do, and we need to educate ourselves about the relevance of this. The reason why that is important is because the waist circumference, if it is higher than 40 in men or higher than 35 in females, it means that you have a lot of visceral fat. So that a lot of deposition of fat around the organs. And if you can imagine a space that is meant for organs and you have all this extra fat cells, it's encroaching upon it and not making the organs function at its maximum. So that is what we call metabolic syndrome. Now, it is important, though, to note that genetics could load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And why do I say this? I have a family history of high blood pressure. My mom has high blood pressure. There's arthritis in my family side. Those are uncontrolled risk factors, right? So I can't change my age, I can't change my gender, I can't change my genetics, but I can change those habits that I have that will pull the trigger. And these are the habits that can ultimately lead to metabolic syndrome. So how do we change this? By our nutrition, and I call it NAS4. So nutrition, what we eat, goes a long way. Our activities, even though you see nutrition is there, is almost 80 to 85% of the work. And then, of course, the other 4 S, which would be sleep, substance abuse, social interactions, and stress. Now, why do I bring this up? Living at your finest. I already mentioned that it's spirit, soul, and body. I do have a few scriptures here, and the reason why, as Sean had mentioned, it's all about making it fun, fundamental, and faith-based, because we can't do anything of our own accord. We can say morning to night that I'm going to abstain from sugar, but unless for me personally, I had to trust God to deliver me from the sugar addiction, because I had done it for so many years, and I wanted it to be a permanent solution. nutrition. And so for me, I know that God wants me to prosper and be in good health, even as my soul prospers. So coming up with this finesse, it was just God revealing that it has to be both this mental, spiritual, and physical. So let's dive into what finesse means. And I'm going to do this really quickly. Fitness, it's the F part. So exercising smarter. And then interactions, our self-worth and value, and nutrition. So what does nutrition mean? Nutrition is very important, that if we eat the right foods, then we're not craving sugar. And that was what my solution was learning what are the right foods, knowing what my triggers are. So why I eat, what I eat, when I eat, and how I eat. We have the basic food groups. And again, nutrition is a big topic, so I'm really just going to scratch the surface. I think the main thing I want to state here, though, is if we eat the right foods. So that's why we're doing this sugar challenge. If we cut back sugar, and it does take time, a gradual process, meaning that we surround ourselves with healthier food choices. So foods that fill us up. So we eat things that don't convert to sugar. And what I tell my patients are, whenever you're sitting down to eat, it has to be a balanced meal. You have to have your protein and you have to have your good fat. Good fat fills you up, that you're not craving sugar. If you all you eat is just carbohydrates, you are going to be hungry in no time, because that's just how that's how it's made. It spikes your sugar up very quickly. You feel good, but then it tanks down and then you're hungry again. So it's a roller coaster. So if you eat the right foods, then you're not craving sugar, right? Making sure that you have your fiber, because fiber keeps you fuller, making sure that you're drinking good water, a good amount of water. So those are the part of the nutrition that you need to, envelope yourself in, that will prevent those sugar cravings. And then and then there's this beautiful picture that I like talking about, that if our diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when diet is correct, medicine is of no need. It's very, very powerful for us to understand that. And just because, I know there are several diets out there, and it's not about the diet, it's the one that you can stick to, the healthy one that you can stick to. And knowing that, yes, everything is lawful, but is it beneficial for you? If you already know that gluten does you one kind of way, or you know that milk, dairy you can't tolerate it, or you can't eat a bag of chips, all those things, you have to figure out what it is. Just because it's available doesn't mean that we need to eat it. You know yourself, you're your best teacher as to what you can eat that will profit your body a whole lot of good. So fitness, the way I do fitness now, I mean, those days where I used to exercise hours and hours in the gym just because I ate a donut overnight, or I didn't eat well the day before, that's not the way to do it anymore. It's about exercising smarter. And the daily recommendation is really, weekly recommendation is 150 minutes, 5 days a week. So pretty much it breaks down into 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And that's to start off with. And it can be a combination of what you enjoy to do. It does need to have some strength training at least twice a week, because as women, we lose muscle mass. And even though I'm not laying so much emphasis on fitness, because really it's about what we eat. We vote with our fork. It's not with the exercise. Exercise is just to keep us less stressed and to keep our body mobilizing properly the blood flow. But we do need to incorporate this as well with strength training, cardio, and finding something that you enjoy doing and being consistent at it. Several exercise benefits. I won't dive into that for now. Interactions. Now, why is this important? Interaction is also a part of just craving. I know that when I'm stressed, when there's a lot going on, if I'm having issues at home or with my kids or with my husband, I'm an emotional eater. I was an emotional eater. I've learned how to handle those emotions now, though. So, but I need to first of all understand, what is my self-worth? Is that side of a cake going to make matters better? It's not. What are my established values? And I like this saying by Atul Gawande that says human beings are social creatures. We are social not just in the trivial sense that we like company, and it's not just in the obvious sense that we each depend on others, but it's the fact that we're social in more elemental ways. Simply to exist as normal human beings require interaction. So we need those interactions. And if we have healthy interactions, though, that is what will help support those healthy choices. So if we're around people that are eating a whole lot of bunch of things that trigger you, then you need to stay away. And that's why I love the group that Sean has created, where we can encourage each other, we can ask questions of each other, because we're learning and growing together. Now, the last three that I would talk about is enrichment, which is the E part of finest, sleep, and take a break. Enrichment, we have to be lifelong learners. Even as a doctor, I mean, medical school, as I mentioned, alluded, I barely got to 2 hours of training in nutrition. It was more about diseases and how to treat them. How about taking care of the root issues? What are the problems? When do they begin? How can we check for them before they become a disease that we need to treat? So being a lifelong learner, figuring out what are you doing that is not serving you? What do you need to unlearn? I've had to unlearn so many things that I thought that was gospel. I mean, I was feeding my kids cereal that they said was healthy. Can you imagine? The box would say healthy, but when you read the back, because I had to learn how to read labels, and then I was like, it's a ton of sugar, and then I'm wondering why they're jumping all over the place. So we have to be lifelong learners. When I was chronically fatigued, I will be sleeping off on the road driving to work. What was the issue? It was vitamin D that was low. I was chronically fatigued because my vitamin D was low. So being that lifelong learner, you enrich your life, you enrich your health. And when I talk about holistic health, it's 7 main components. It's emotional, physical, social. So there's so much to learn, and we learn from one another as we get better day by day. Sleep. Now, this is a big pet peeve for me. Sleep is we just don't sleep enough. And sometimes we see it as a badge of honor, and unfortunately it shouldn't be. Anything less than 7 to 9 hours is not adequate. And the important part here is that if we don't sleep adequately, we are going to crave sugar the next day. I have seen it happen to me over and over again. If we get less than 7 hours, your body does not automatically go into that phase where it needs to burn calories and rejuvenates itself. And guess what happens when you don't sleep adequately? You have the hormone called ghrelin. That's the hunger hormone. It's in high amounts the next morning when you wake up. The stress hormone is in high amounts. So if we want to cut sugar, we got to sleep. They say you cut your sleep, you cut your life. That's pretty much how they say it, that we need to just make sure that we sleep adequately. And I'm happy to answer any further questions about how to make sure that we sleep. And this is something I'm working on all the time, because we're busy, 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 always so much to do, but we need to respect that place for sleep. And then the last aspect I want to talk about and how we can break that sugar craving is we need to prioritize self-care. They tell us, you hear it all the time, that self-care is not selfish. For women, that we're nurturers, always doing things for everybody but ourselves. We don't take time to care for ourselves. And when we don't care for ourselves, we're doing ourselves a disjustice. Until I learned these 6 components to cut my sugar craving, I wasn't free. And when I learned this with the help of God, then I was able to set free from just the roller coaster of diet culture, and learn to live in freedom of sugar. Now, of course, because I have that history, I always have to be mindful. I always have to be in a team of women like you, just fighting the same battle, encouraging each other, but also encouraging ourselves to love ourselves first and to take time out for ourselves. So really, that brings me to pretty much the end of this session, and I'm really open for questions, but I want you to read this and understand what it tells us, that if we don't take time for our wellness, we will be forced to take time for illness. So one way or the other, it is hard, yes, to stop the sugar craving. It is. I know I've been through it, and I know that they're both hard, to eat it and not to eat it, but there's one hard that is better than the other hard, where you live in wellness, you live healthy, you're strong, you're able to do the activities that you want to do, play with your kids, your grandkids, and just live a more fulfilling life that is not filled with all the diseases and the copay that you have to pay for all the multiple medications. So I hope that this has been helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wow. That was awesome. I don't think I've ever heard so much good content from a physician. So I'm just going to say whoop whoop to Dr. Babs. I mean, like, I just wished I could be one of your patients because, I think for me, it's just been such a struggle to have that physician to where you, first of all, have got enough time. Two, that maybe you can connect with. I mean, it's kind of hard to connect with someone that doesn't understand your struggle, has never had a baby before, doesn't know, what your work hours are like or what your life is like, or what your struggles are like. It's just a woman. So I just think it's just incredible that you are sharing your knowledge with us. And this content, I'm going to have to go back and look at it even myself because you really packed in a lot of information, great information about how our body works, in together or when it's not working, when it's unbalanced. I do know that we have a couple of questions that were posed on the site today. And one was about, could you just talk a little bit about the impact that sugar has on your hormones? Um, Ernestine wanted to know if there is like a difference between like, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, basically in those stages of life. How does sugar have an impact on our hormones?
Right. So that's a great question. And thank you for bringing up those questions. Yeah. So sugar, it's, as you know, you hear us say when we're younger that, oh, yeah, we can eat all the sugar we want. We're going to burn it anyway. We have a high metabolism. And that's correct. The science proves that we have high metabolisms as a younger child. It's the same thing as the vehicle, right? You just buy a vehicle that is 1 or 5 years old compared to a vehicle that is 16 years old. There's a difference in the performance. So yes, it's correct. When you're younger, your body can, very quickly metabolize sugar. But we need to be aware that as we get older, our metabolism actually it begins to slow down. It slows down every year to the extent that by the time you hit your 30s, it's actually almost like one third. It's cut back. So you're not able to process all that sugar. But I realize that even for that child, because if I, I always tell people that say they don't battle with sugar, I tell them I envy them. Because if I could go back and not eat all that sugar and not have to go through the battles that I'm going through right now, I would do it. Because there's some people that just didn't grow up with sugar, and I envy them because they didn't have that battle. But again, maybe they have another battle, maybe it's salt or something. So to answer the question, sugar damages the blood cells. It damages the blood cells. It causes inflammation, if anything at all. So not just the metabolism that is slowed down, that you cannot process it as well, it causes inflammation. And that's why whenever the body is it's made to digest natural foods. That's the way the body was made to. Natural foods, it recognizes it as natural food. But every time we eat sugar with all the additives, now if it is fruit, that's a different, because that's fructose from the soil. That is, as the Lord has made it. But when we eat all that sugar, the all the names. I know Sean has a list of all the alternative names. If we're eating all of that with the pastries and white bread, the body doesn't recognize it. It doesn't recognize it. And what it does is that it attaches it as a foreign object, and it deposits into the joint. And that was why I was having a lot of joint issues. I promise you, my husband turned 50 last year, and I hadn't been on sugar for a while. And I got this cake from Publix, and I promise you, that cake was so delicious. I ate it. That whole weekend, I was hurting like crazy. It was so much sugar. And I was like, I knew it. I said I should not have gone back to eating sugar again because it was hurting all weekend. So that is from my personal experience and what the science says. It forms inflammation in your joints. It causes plaques in your arteries, and it causes wrinkles. Of course, it causes any inflammation. Just name it, inflammation. And when we hear inflammation, inflammation just means it's a foreign material that has not been recognized by the body, and it's engulfed it and it's deposited in several places. It doesn't know what to do with it. So wherever it goes, it just stays there and causes more damage. So I think that was the first part of the question in terms of the age. As we get older, metabolism slows down. It's not being able to burn it. And unfortunately, inflammation is what happens, other than the diabetes and all of that. And wherever inflammation takes place, imagine the blood vessels, it's going to damage it. It damages anything that has blood vessels, which blood vessels is everywhere in the body anyway.
Wow, that's it. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So, and somebody's like, what, wrinkles? Oh, yeah. So that's a good
Yeah,
reason, right?
wrinkles. It ages you. It ages you. Any inflammation ages you, and that's why, yeah, wrinkles. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. So, I'm going to ask, I think it's Sherry that was asking, how does sugar affect hypertension?
Right. So sugar, how that affects hypertension, and it's an indirect way to say. I mean, blood pressure, for me, my blood pressure was a combination of weight gain as well as stress. Oh my goodness, I was so stressed that I had so much high stress hormones, and it was circulating in the bloodstream and damaging the lining of the arteries. So that's what happens. And the same thing, if you look at that same picture with stress, is the same thing with sugar. So sugar deposits, it's not processed properly, so it deposits. And then anytime you have all that visceral fat, that's extra work for the heart to do. So it's carrying extra weight. It's like, you know what? I can keep up. I'll keep pressing. I'll keep pressing. But then there's more weight. There's more sugar. There's more insulin, back and forth. And after a while, it just damages the vessel. So blood that is supposed to be flowing like this, shh, shh, it's not flowing like that. It's hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting. And to the extent that it begins to damage the lining of the vessels. And that's where you see all that blood pressure, because it's just doing more than the work that it's supposed to do. And that could be for several reasons: sugar, stress, extra weight, so many things like that. Now, if we talk about salt, so we talk about sugar, salt sometimes, again, they interchange because of the pathways. But anytime you eat high salt as well as carbohydrate, guess what it does? For every gram of carbohydrate, it takes almost 3.7 grams of water. So it absorbs fluid. So it's giving extra pressure for the heart to work.
Okay. I'm going to just do maybe one or two more. I'm thinking maybe one more question because I'd like for them to know how they can really just access you, because I think it's really important that we encourage each other on this platform to reach out and just promote and hey, it's not just this sugar platform. You got other things going on too. So the last question that I have is, I think someone wants to know if you recommend anything like when they're going through the sugar detox. Do you have any recommendations for the sluggishness or the headaches?
Yes, and that is so common. And that's because your body, our body is so unique. It really is. It has craved. Remember, I told you about what's going on with the brain? It is what it's used to. You've given it sugar all this while, and all of a sudden you're saying you're not giving it to it anymore. It's like, no, I need that sugar. So, what you need to do is really stay hydrated. Water, water, water. A lot of times people say they have headaches, and it's because they're dehydrated. The body is 80% of water, somewhere between 70 to 80% of water. And most times, and I've seen this on myself, I am hungry and so hungry, but it's because I'm dehydrated. So drink lots of water. That will help during that detox time. Be patient with the process. You want to make sure that you're not doing any high intensity energy activities, because your body wants that glucose. So I would recommend lots of water. If you're not someone that likes water, flavor it with cucumbers or celery sticks. That also helps with the detox. And just make sure you sleep. Sleep also helps. I mean, that's what helped me when I had to detox from that cake that I enjoyed last year for my husband's birthday party. That was what I had to do.
Mhm.
And then apple cider vinegar. I enjoy apple cider vinegar. It's very, very good for the body. It helps to ease you out of detox. So those are a few things that I would recommend. But again, it's the average somewhere between 5, 7 days. By the time you're outside of your first week, you really will, your body begin to feel great. You begin to see the benefits of being off of sugar. But the first few days, yeah, it's your body fighting you for that crave that it's always had.
Yeah, that's true. I so agree. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about what you've got going on your outside world and how we can access you.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to connect with women of like mind. Remember, we're doing this together. I always say healthier together. So the way you can access me, I actually have a Facebook page. I'd love for you to join me. I have lots of content and holistic health. I release that most times on Wednesdays, different days of the week. So it's called Living at Your Finest with Dr. Babs. So you can reach me there. I have a YouTube channel. I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I love that I get to speak with other women because it's all about empowering women, right? To just embody their worth and nourish their spirits and their bodies. So the YouTube channel, it's Living at Your Finest with Dr. Babs. Sometimes I have what we call the health exchange chat room. So if any one of you want to meet me in the chat room and you have a topic that you desire to talk about, then I would inquire, and then we'll do it through Zoom, and then I will discuss the topic at length. So those are two ways. And I also have a podcast called Living at Your Finest podcast. So those are the ways to reach me, and I'll definitely love to connect with you. Now I do have a PDF that I will make sure that I put the information. It's a freebie that just talks about general holistic health, the finest that I described, and that's free on my website, which is livingatyourfinest.com.
Okay. Well, I believe that's it because I know you've got to run a full clinic tomorrow and do your work. And I just appreciate you spending your time. I know the other ladies do too. And we are so fortunate to have you in this group and collaborating with us. And just know, FYI, y'all, she's in the group. So she does respond. But we don't want to overextend ourselves and overuse her, but just know that she's in our group and that we're building these connections together and that we're just trying to get healthy together. So we appreciate you again, and we love you, and thank you again. Okay.
Thank you. Love you all too. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.